The handwriting in the note leads most experts to conclude that Patsy could have composed it, but by somehow using a disguised handwriting. Handwriting experts, like all witness for hire experts in any field, are proven wrong in court all the time. To prioritize a handwriting expert's subjective conclusion as hard evidence is very problematic. For instance, if a trial occurred, each side's expert witness would give conflicting testimonies. The defense witness would say that the defendant cannot be the author, while the prosecution's witness would say that the writing is very similar to the defendant. One expert could be accurate, but both could be wrong too. Each expert witness is probably getting paid by their respective sides. How American courts continue to operate with such obvious conflict of interests is beyond us. And the truth seems to lose the conflict very frequently. The adversarial system has its merits, but for real, America, come on. Handwriting experts were also employed by Team Ramsey. These experts observed differences between Patsy Ramsey's writing and the note, and concluded that it is unlikely she is the author. Experts were also consulted by the Boulder Police Department. Two considered Patsy as the writer, but neither were willing to testify in court. In other words, these experts were not confident enough in their conclusions to potentially be held accountable for them in cross-examination. All of the experts were willing to eliminate John, but not Patsy. Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner was quoted as saying, "Handwriting experts noted some similarities, but not enough to say she wrote the note." If we take what the police chief said at face value, then according to him, the experts do not believe that Patsy wrote the note. But then why were the similarities found, again, but not enough to conclude that Patsy wrote the note? The most frequently cited Ramsey experts used a scale of 5 to 1. 1 being highly likely to be the author, with 5 being highly unlikely. John scored a 5, and Patsy scored a 4.5. Some have commented that John was eliminated as being the author by experts, while Patsy is obviously the writer. According to the experts who used the 5 to 1 scale, this would be analogous to John scoring a 0% on a test, Patsy scoring a 10%, and then someone proclaiming that because Patsy scored higher than John, Patsy passed the test with flying colors. If you say that John was eliminated, according to the experts' scale, then you have to assign Patsy practically the same probability. According to the experts' scale, both Ramseys are very unlikely to have written the note. But if we are fairly certain that there was no intruder, then who would have written the note? Your response might be, well, the experts who used the 5 to 1 scale were hired by the Ramseys, so it's no wonder they would assign low probability. Let's say that you dismiss the experts who used the 5 to 1 scale, because the Ramseys are paying them. Notice, now you are dismissing and choosing what experts to acknowledge, based on other factors than the handwriting itself. This only illustrates how subjective handwriting analysis can be, and how experts are dismissed or accepted, for other reasons than the actual analysis. If a defendant can hire a handwriting expert to give them a certain conclusion, then objectivity just doesn't exist in this case. Ask yourself, how can Patsy's handwriting be evident, but most experts are unwilling to attribute authorship to her in court? In order to trace and forge handwriting, a sample of the handwriting must be available to the forger. We believe that John used the legal pad, containing miscellaneous samples of Patsy's handwriting. If a forger traces another person's writing, it is very difficult to identify the forger's own writing. The forger is more or less drawing the letters of another person's writing, not using their own handwriting per se. So, the experts can identify similarities to the person whose handwriting is being forged, for obvious reasons, but it will be difficult to identify the actual forger's own handwriting. If Patsy's handwriting was so apparent in the note, this would have been grounds to arrest her. What police found was that the experts, for some reason, could not outright attribute authorship to Patsy. But at the same time, these same experts could not fully eliminate her, because of similarities in the handwriting. If Patsy didn't write the note, where do the similarities come from? To True Crime Oracle, it would make perfect sense that John would be eliminated as being the author. It also makes perfect sense that Patsy's handwriting would seem to be in the note, but not enough to actually arrest her. To us, what appeared to be Patsy disguising is actually John forging Patsy's handwriting. Again, this would explain why John's handwriting is not detected, and Patsy's writing is detectable but not apparent enough to attribute authorship. Note: if you believe an intruder wrote the note, you must explain the similarities to Patsy's handwriting. If you say that the intruder, not John, traced and forged Patsy's writing, then you have to explain the similarities in vocabulary, familiarity with Patsy's religious beliefs, and knowledge of the bonus amount. If an intruder knew one of these, maybe, but to know all three would be very improbable. As we have said before, identifying the mind behind the ransom note is primary to identifying the writer. The physical handwriting is secondary, due to the deceptive nature of the note. Although a single practice note was found, we believe that there were many other drafts of the ransom note that were destroyed by the author. The final note that became evidence was probably accomplished after many drafts and hours of editing and writing. Again, we must point out that John was under extreme pressure to avoid going from the summit of society to the absolute gutter. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. But let us be frank. For the sake of intellectual honesty, we admit that we are making many assumptions when we attribute authorship to John. How can this insignificant channel reasonably attribute authorship to John, when the handwriting experts overwhelmingly eliminate John as the author? All we can say to this is that the general public seems to believe that an intruder is responsible for the death of JonBenet Ramsey. We hope that our content has helped reduce the intruder theory to the absurdity that it is. We have never claimed expertise of any kind on this channel. We appeal to common sense and the explanatory power of deductive reasoning. But sadly, at this point in our society, experts cannot be trusted to be intellectually honest. So while keeping that in mind, we do not put it past mere possibility that even the experts were deceived by John's bizarre forgery. At True Crime Oracle, we respect that experts can have a specialized knowledge of a field. That being said, we suggest that you always appeal to your own reason when you make final conclusions about reality.